Hello and welcome to my knitting podcast. My name is Irma and you can find me on YouTube, Ravelry and Instagram as Wolwerkjes. Welcome to everybody. I hope you will enjoy this video. This is a space where I talk about all the things I make, mostly knitting, and just let's get started. One thing up front, I have a bit of a cold, so there will be maybe lots of cutting and stuff in this video because I will have to cut for something. So just that's why there will be a little bit more cuts in this video than normal maybe. So I always start with what I'm wearing, if there is any handmade stuff in there. I'm wearing two handmade pieces. First is this shawl. I will take it off so you can have a little bit better look. It's not a available pattern or something, it's just something I made up. It's triangular but not that deep and quite wide, so yeah, it's good to wrap around your neck. You can tie it even, but it's not going down to your belly button. Which I don't mind really, but the most important thing to make it more shallow in this case is that this is hand spun. I spun this yarn myself. It's the first, I don't think it really is the first try on the spindle, but I think it's the second, maybe, yeah, I think it's the second try out. And really the first time I went for real with that I was like, okay, I'm going to spin enough to make a project. So this is all hand spun by me, and I also made the blend myself. I don't know, you can see there is a different in the graduation. You see there's more blue and white here and more gray on the top and on the bottom. I blended it on my blending board and it's blended with a blue dyed yarn fiber, merino. There is some white silk in here, there is some white merino in here and a natural grey. And yeah, I'm really proud of this piece. It's my first piece hand spun and I'm really happy with it. It's my only hand spun piece at the moment. I did made a picot edged scarf. It's a pattern on Ravelry. It's free, which is really easy to adjust to the amount of yarn you have. Out of hand spun, but I lost it and I don't know where. So that's really not funny. So this is my only hand spun piece at this moment. I do have a little bit more hand spun lying around to knit up, but I'm searching for the right project for that. I had just enough for the scarf or shawl if you want it. You can notice that this corner is a little bit strange. When I was binding off, this is my binding off edge. I think I had enough to get like over here. And for this I didn't have enough, so I fixed it in another way. I don't know how. I think I pulled the loops through each other, like making a chain of the loops you already have without knitting them. And yeah, it's a little bit wonky, but when I'm wearing it, no one will notice, and that means I used all of this COLOURWAY handspun I have, and that makes me really happy because I have a hard time throwing away leftovers because it feels like waste. But it's not always easy to find projects for your leftovers. I do have a Cozy Memories blanket, but you need a certain amount of yarn for each square. So most of the times you have more leftovers or too less to make a square. So yeah, that's the thing. But I had no leftovers from this shawl, so that's really nice. I'll put it on again. The other thing I'm wearing that is handmade is the dress I'm wearing. I will just pop up a little so you can see. I'm not going to show it really well because there's no need for that, but this black dress I made myself with a pattern from the Littlest Studio. It's a free pattern, I think, and when you Google it you will find it, I think. So let's continue to the part where I show the things I worked on this week. I only did knitting this week. I did not do any, I'm thinking, no, I don't think I did any other crafts. I did make a, and I will pop in a picture because I'm not going to show it here because it's too big. I made a warping board with some help of my neighbor, and yeah, for people who don't know what a warping board is, it's a board where you can wrap your yarn on in different ways, and that makes the warp for weaving, so the long threads of weaving. And when you do it the right way, you separate each strand so you know the order in which they will be going on your weaving board or your loom. But I'm a hand dyer, I'm not a weaver. I really want a loom, but it's a lot of money and I don't have the space right now. I think I will go for one that's where you're able to how do you call it? I want to be able to. I wanted to be able to flip inwards, so it takes less space when you store it. And those are quite expensive. So I'm still like, I'll wait a little. I will wait maybe a few years, because it's an investment and I have enough things to do. But the reason I made this board is because I am a hand dyer of yarn, which you can find on my website, wolwerkjes.com. And I really like making self-striping yarn. But the way I used to do it is I have 2 hooks in my garden and I wrap the yarn around to make a big loop, and then I make myself striping, which is fine, but more time consuming than warping on the board. And I'm not that flexible with the length of the loop. It's hard to find the perfect distance to make the big circle, because when you dye self-striping yarn, you want one full circle of yarn is one repeat. And you want it to be big enough to get multiple stripes. So that's why you need a big loop of yarn for dyeing. But it took a lot of time and I wasn't that flexible in the amount of stripes I could get in one loop. So I decided that I needed a warping board, and it's way cheaper to make one than to buy one. I think the one from Shaft is about $140, and I think I made mine for under 40 euros. Of course it took a little bit of time, but I think we managed to fix it in one afternoon maybe, so that's quite okay. And yes, I'm really happy with it. So that took a little bit of time, and it's something I made. I'm only not going to show it over here, and you're here for the knitting, so I will just start showing my knitting. I don't have any finished objects. I do have quite some progress on different projects, so I will show you those. And I will start with a sock. I'm knitting a commercial yarn. It's Regia yarn. It's one of the designs by Arne and Carlos. Let me see if I can show you. It's nice yarn to work with. I got this from my parents when they were on holiday in Germany, I think. This is the first one. It's already finished, and I've shown this before. I did a fish lips kiss heel. I don't know why, I just did. I switch around the heels I use. And I started the second one. When I started, I already knew that it would be different than the first one because I started at a different point in the repeat. I was fully aware of this, and I didn't want to rip out the ball to make it match, because waste, and I couldn't be bothered with it. But when I was knitting this, somewhere over here the yarn was knotted together, which can happen in commercial yarns. They use machines to dye the yarn, and I know it can break and that they have to tie it. I don't like it when there are knots in my yarn, but I know it can happen. But what I really was a little bit upset about is that I had a few, after the knot, I had a few rows of blank, like white over here. And then there was like, yeah, it's on both sides. There was like some purple striping with the brown, which is nowhere in the first sock, nowhere in the repeat. So I was like, oh, that's strange. And after the little bit of striping of the purple and the brown, it got into the repeat again, but it started over here in the repeat. You can see this part is the same as this part. So now they're not only not matching, but also the repeat is different. What's really funny is that when you put them together, you can see that they lined up again. So the rest of the sock will be the same as the first one, which is kind of funny. But I find it a bit annoying that I know there can be knots in the yarn, and I think it takes a lot of time to make it match again. But they sell this yarn to be for the color repeat, and they messed up the color repeat over here. So that was a little bit annoying. I was a little bit sad about it. I will finish them one day and it will be fine. I think they were supposed to be for the indoor use from the beginning, so it's not a big problem, but a little bit upsetting that they messed up the color repeat. It's really, yeah, not nice. I just got us upset a little, but I'm still working on them, and I put a marker in there. So I knit this much on this sock the past 2 weeks. Not only to show you, but mainly for myself. I try to put markers on my projects now, and not markers like progress keepers, just because I do not always remember what I talked about in the previous episode. So that way I can see how much I have done, and I think it's quite okay. It's not the world's most sock progress, but I think it's good enough. Which, by the way, it's always good enough. It's a hobby. It's something that should give you joy. So no matter how many knitting you did, as long as you did enough to make you happy, I think that's the most important thing. Let me see, I will show this one. I'm really happy I worked on this project. I will show you. It's a jumper. I promised, not really promised, but I told my husband that I will knit him a sweater, and I told him, I think like a year ago, maybe, yeah, I think around a year ago. Maybe 2 years ago even. That would be really bad. I think it's 2 years ago now, I'm thinking of it. Well, anyway, a long time ago I said I will knit you a sweater, and I involved him in choosing the colors, and he was like, yeah, well, okay. And I started it and I knitted on it, and then I put it aside for some time. It's I'm going to show you. It was color work. I was not really, it wasn't my first color work, but I wasn't really like steady in my tension yet. So I put it aside for a while, and when I picked it up again, I had a way more constant tension in the yarn. So you could really see the difference in the first part I knitted and the second part I knitted. And I was knitting on it and I was like, oh, I don't like this difference and I can't fix it. And so I ripped it out and I put it aside for quite some time again. And I think in the spring this year I started it again. And I knit like this much of the, here is my progress keeper, I knit this much of the ribbing. Then I put it aside again, and somewhere those 2 weeks I was like, I'm going to knit on this again. And I did this much. I will show you. So here was my progress keeper. I knit through the ribbing and now I am on the lace pattern. The lice pattern, I always mess up the pronunciation, but those dots every so often, it's they have lice that are going like a smiley face, and when you knit top down they call it fleece, which is kind of funny, but it gives like a little bit more it's like a little bit more interesting than just plain stockinette in one color. And it also, you have the floats on the back side, which means that there is more fabric, more yarn in the piece, so it's warmer than when you knit only stockinette. And I think in history when they start doing this, I think it was mostly because of the warmth, so it gives a little bit more isolation. And I'm quite happy with my tension and I'm quite proud of that. And the yarn was ripped out once, so you can notice that at some point when you're knitting, but I think in the fabric you can't see that. And yes, it's really fun. I'm using my Haya sharps for this, which isn't maybe the best choice because it's quite splitty yarn, and a sharp point you can get in the yarn quite easily, but I have not much trouble with it. I'm using quite a small circumference cable, because that makes it easier to knit. You don't have to move your stitches all the time, but it makes it hard to show because I can drop, especially on these slick needles, it's really easy to drop stitches when you try to show something. So it looks quite small now, but I'm quite sure it will fit. I knit a ribbing on a smaller needle to make it a little bit more tight, and I think it will work out fine. Once I'm on the point where they tell you to start the top part of the collar work, I will measure, I will put it on a bigger needle and I can fit it on my husband, so I'm sure it will be long enough. It's a pattern by Arne and Carlos, like coincidence that I knit a yarn designed by them in my socks now. It's out of a book of them and I'm thinking about the title. It's Norwegian knits with a twist in America, I think, and in England they have another name for it, but this jumper is on the front. They knit it in white and black. My husband wants it white and brown, which is fine. And yeah, it's really funny. And you knit it like a tube. So all the way until the shoulder shaping and seams. I don't know if there is really much shaping at the shoulder, but until the shoulder seams it's just one tube, and then you cut in the sides for a hole, to create a hole where your sleeves will go, like a steek they call that. And you don't knit like a steek, so you don't mark the point where you will cut. I think you will just measure it out afterwards. And I'm thinking about maybe making like a marked line for myself, so I know where the sleeve should go. But it's also fun to just try it the way they do it. So that's the thing. So you only go round and round, even in the top part after you would normally separate for the sleeves. You're still knitting in the round, which is nice. What I'm quite picky about how the inside of my garments look, and it's funny because I'm more picky on it with knitting than I am with sewing, because with sewing I'm still learning. I'm not professional in that way for sewing clothes with a nice finishing on the inside, but with the knitting I really want it to be tight and neat. So when you cut somewhere a steek, your knitwear wants to go inside. It rolls up on itself, which is normal in stockinette stitch, that it will roll up on itself, which is nice because it goes inside instead of outside, so it will be hide inside your garment. But then you have all those cut ends, and what I like to do is knit an extra piece on your sleeves or on the edge of your knitting, depends on where the steek is, that I will stitch over the cut edges, so it covers it up and you can't be bothered with it. You're not constantly looking, oh, is it still looking okay? It's covered up, it's inside, and when you use the right wool it will felt in there, so it will be extra secure. And yeah, this costs a little bit more time because you have to knit a little bit more, which is irrelevant when you know how much knitting there is in the sweater. But you also have to hand sew it to your garment, and that takes a little bit more time. But I will just do it. When I do it, I'm happy with it, so I will just take the time to do that. But I'm really happy with my progress. And this project started out that when I'm like, when I feel like I don't know what to knit, I will grab this knitting. But at the moment I'm quite gravitated to this knitting, so I think it will be maybe when I can keep up this this motivation, I think it will be finished maybe quite soon. Not like next time, I mean like maybe Christmas, but still, that's a lot quicker than 2 years. So we will see, but yeah, really happy with this knitting project at the moment. Let me see, I have another work in progress that I have shown before, but will show again. And it's my Vertices Unite shawl, and I am so happy with this project. It's so nice to work on. I've already shown, but I'm going to show again. I started with this big section over here with 2 variegated yarns. In Vertices Unite there are a lot of yarns striped together, and those 2 were striped in here. And it goes, I'm knitting the large version, and I think my tension is a little looser than the pattern calls for, so my shawl is really big. So this was the first section. Then you attach while knitting this second part, which is on needle to hold the stitches. So that's why it's a little bit harder to show you. I was a little bit concerned after knitting this one, because I went from like blending together those 2 gorgeous colorways to like hard striping in those 2 more solid colorways. So that was a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I will like this, but a lot of people convinced me that it's beautiful, so I'll just go with it. It will be beautiful when it's finished. It's not finished yet, so you only can I think this is a project you can only tell if you like it until you really finished it. I think that's not always the case. Some people say when you don't like it now, you will never like it. But I think in this case, with all the colors striping together in multiple parts of the shawl, I think you can only see the complete working of the colors together when it's all finished. But that's just my opinion. Then you go to a third section in the shawl, which is in 1 color, and I use the most it's not variegated, it's tonal. It's in 1 color theme, like it's all in the same family of greens, but there's quite a lot of difference between the light and the dark, a lot of contrast. So I think that was nice that I chose that one for a big section in 1 color to give it a little bit more depth. When I bought this colorway, I thought it was more like all the colors to get I wasn't expecting stripes, but it's nice. I really like how it worked out in this shawl, and I'm really happy with it. And now I am on the fourth section. Oh, dropping stitches. Okay. And it's knitted on the first, attached to the first section again. Just like I think the second section is down here, and you knit this one on top here. And it's the same blue as striped with orange over here. And I really like this blue on its own. There's quite some depth in it. And yeah, there's quite some depth in it, and I really like how this works out. And then there are 2 more sections to go, and the border, I don't know. It's like when you finished all the sections, you kind of feel like it's complete, and then you have to still knit the border. And it's not like a border on a tea towel or something. It's like a border on a massive shawl. So I don't know if I will like it or not, but we will see. But I'm very happy with this. What I did the past 2 weeks is, I think I was somewhere over here, I think. So I knit quite a lot on the green section, and I knit this on the 4th section. So quite some work. I'm really happy with it. It's really soft, and I can't wait to wear it, because the weather is changing, and it's not like cold like freezing cold or something, but it's definitely not warm enough to walk outside without a little bit of protection. And I've noticed that I have a coat, of course, but I can find the coat quite warm, maybe a little bit too warm sometimes. So it's nice to have like a shawl to wrap yourself in when you need to go outside. And I can't wait until this one is finished so I can use it in that way. So really happy with this project as well. And I have one more knitting project to show you. I have to put everything back in the bags. Back in the bags. Because otherwise my cat will eat the yarn. I don't know. I think it's like cat puberty. Is there such a thing? He is 1.5 years old now. Around 1.5 years old. And he eats everything he can find. So when we leave things around, he left my yarn alone quite okay. Unless they were skeins, then he really wanted to attack them from the beginning. But now he's like threads. I don't know, he's obsessed with loose threads. So yeah, and he will eat it, like really eat it, not like just nibbling, just eat it. I had to go to the vet with him last week because he ate a piece of thread from a toy for cats, like a fishing. He can run after it, and I put it down for a few minutes because I had to fix something, and he just ate the middle part. And when it gets inside of his system, it can really damage him. So I called the vet and they say, yeah, that's no good, we have to take that out. So yeah, and you should think like, oh, maybe it's a lesson, he will know it's not a good idea to eat threads. But I think I haven't tried it out. I'm not gonna try it out, but I think he will just do it again. He will just do it again. So that's a little bit, that's why I have to put all my projects back in the bags. Let me see, I have one other project on the go, which is not in a bag, which is kind of dangerous around here. And it's a hat, and I don't know if you can, it's the ribbing, and I'm spiraling those two colors together in the same way that Grace from, oh, I can't remember the name of her podcast, Travelers Yarn. Oh, she's Irish and I really love her podcast. I can't remember the name. I will put it on the screen. But she has a tutorial on, she calls this the jogless joint, I think. And when you use hand-dyed yarn, you can use that to knit with 2 strands, like alternate skeins. Because otherwise you have the problem that sometimes your yarn will flash or pull. So a lot of people use it now to for hand-dyed yarn, and you don't get a seam when you use that method. So normally when you change your skein of yarn every other or every second or every third row, you can see you get like a seam. You can see where you switched to the other skein. But when you use this method, you don't get a seam, so that's really nice. So that's why a lot of people use it for. But you can also use it in 2 colors, and then you get like a spiraling effect, which you can't see that it's a spiral only when you start looking for it, but it makes a really fun effect, and that's why I'm using it. This hat is not big enough for me. well, maybe I can get it on my head. I'm not gonna try. But it's for a boy of 4 years old. It's not for my son, but for a friend of him. He has a friend in school and they dropped off something over here, and he was wearing a hat, and I said, oh, you have a nice hat on your head, and he was like, yeah, but it's a little bit too small, and I need a new one. And I said, well, I can make you one. And he was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And I said, okay, which color do you like? And he said red. So there had to be red in there, and I took the liberty to match it with a darker color. Because I think it will match his look a little bit more. But yeah, there will be red in there, and I really need to finish it because small children don't understand that things take time. I think my sons quite understand now because they see me work on those things. But when it's for someone else's child who doesn't know that knitting takes time, it's nice to speed up the process a little bit, because otherwise he has to wait a long time for his head. So yeah, and it's really fun. I'm using some deep old stash. I think it's acrylic yarn. I'm not sure. I'm quite sure it's acrylic yarn. I don't buy acrylic yarn anymore. Sometimes, like, I find it hard. I know that with the washing of acrylic, there escape microfibers which comes in the water, which also adds to the plastic pollution in the oceans. So that's a reason for me to not buy it too much, especially for things that need washing a lot. I can imagine that for something that's only decorative and doesn't need like washing every week, but maybe once a year or even less, then it's something that's like, I can be okay with that, and everybody has to think for that on his own, but that's something I'm choosing to do for the environment, and other people make other choices. And I think it's also a waste to just throw it away because the yarn is already there. So, and I think it's he really likes playing, and I don't want them to think they have to be careful with something I gave them. So that's why I choose this deep stash yarn. And it's also always fun to use something up you have instead of throwing it out or have to buy new yarn. So I think that's really okay. And I hope you will like it, and I hope it will fit. That's always a guess. I tried it on my own son and it fits him. So I will just have to keep trying and hoping that their head circumferences match a little. But we will see that. But it's really fun to knit on. And it's growing quite fast. I started this yesterday, so it's growing quite fast, which is always nice. So those were all the projects I worked on. I think I can talk in ages about my projects, but I don't think you want it. So I will just leave it at this about my project. I have one other thing I wanted to show you, and it's knitting related, but it's not a project. I already told you I am a hand dyer of yarn, and long-time viewers will already know that. I normally don't show all the things I put in the shop every time. I don't really have like a regular day I update the website. It's a little bit like I have 2 children around here. I'm also a stay-at-home mom next to my business, so there's not always that much time for the dyeing, but once I've dyed something and I have taken pictures, I will put it online. But this year I wanted to make a Christmas colorway, just because I always love the Christmas colorways that go out each year, and I wanted to contribute to that. So I made a Christmas colorway and I dyed it on both my sock bases. One is, yeah, I will just first show you. This is my Christmas colorway. It's self-striping and I'm really happy with how it worked out. So as I said, it's self-striping, so you get a color repeat of 4 colors. And yeah, I'm in love with it. As you can see, this one is much brighter than this one. That's because this is 100% Corriedale wool. So this takes up more dye than this base does, because there is rami in there, and rami is a plant fiber, and my dyes don't attach to plant fibers. And it's not like I throw away dye. I calculate how much I need for this yarn. And what I could have done is dye this in the same, I can calculate to match this skein to this skein, that they look exactly the same. But I kind of like the bold colors on this one. And it's just the nature of the base that it will be lighter on this one. So I think that's just something that has to do with the bases. And I don't want to take any compromises on this color on this base, just because my other base takes the dye less efficient, because there is a plant fiber in there. But there are the same colors, only a little bit less vibrant on this one, and I'm in love with it. I'm definitely going to keep a skein for myself. My brother wants one, he's a knitter, so yeah, there's one skein reserved already for him. But yeah, it's really, I'm really happy with it. And because it's a festive colorway, I called it a Christmas colorway before, I think. I don't matter what festivities you have in at the end of the year. I think it's really fun to celebrate the end of the year, and some people do that with Christmas, some people do that with Hanukkah. There are a lot of different festivities around that time. It's getting darker, it's getting weather to get more cozy, so I just like to contribute to that. It will be found on the site as a festive colorway, not as a Christmas colorway. Use it for whatever you want. The name of this colorway is Jewel Ball, because I am a Harry Potter fan. I'm sorry, I am a Harry Potter fan, like most yarnies are, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a Harry Potter fan. I don't need to apologize for that. And the colors I used are inspired by the colors you see in the movie a little. Not completely, but like the pink from Hermione's dress, of course, is in there. I think the blues for the eyes that surround. I really love the books, so I really like that. And it's like wink to in the books, Harry wears 2 different socks under his dress robes, because he got them as a present from Dobby the house elf. And I'm not gonna match mine, so one sock will be the colors one way and the other sock will be the colors the other way, just because to wear different socks in tribute to, just because of that fun story that I know, that he has 2 different socks underneath his dress robes. I think that's funny. And as I can remember it right, one of them has snitches on there. And I already wanted to add like a gold color, but I wasn't sure, but then the memory of the story popped up in my head and I was like, oh, but on one of his socks there are snitches, so there should be gold in there. Despite the fact that the color gold is something you see with the festivities, but it also makes me laugh because I know there are snitches on one of his socks, so that's really fun. I can't remember what's on the other one. I think broomsticks, but I'm not quite sure. But that's a little bit about this colorway, and it will be, I'm going to promise something now, which I find hard because that means I have to find time to dye a little bit more. But it will be in the shop, I think, next Friday, so that will be the 27th of September. Yes, and of course, when it's out of stock, you can always message me through the website or on one of the other places I am around on the internet. If they're sold out, you can ask me if I want to dye more. And I think I will, because it's really fun to do. I really like making self-striping yarn. You can look and decide not to buy it. You can look and, as me, fall in love with it and can't stand it to not have it. But that's completely up to you. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I will grab a cup of coffee and sit a little bit outside in a corner where there is no wind to sit in the sunshine, because it's quite good weather today. And I will hope to see you next time. Bye!